Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host, Steve Semino, and with me as always is my co-host, Walt Schwenk. Hey, Walters.
Hello, Steven. How's it going?
God damn it, every time now. I know it's coming and I still laugh. I don't even know if that's what you're going for at this point, is to make me laugh. I'm honestly not sure what
I
your
don't know.
preferred outcome is.
I'm not quite sure either, but it is also not reflective of how I feel about the content we cover.
No, it's
So I'm
really
not sure
not.
why I'm compelled to do that.
This is good content. This is a fun. I think it's a fun one we're going to talk about. So I know you didn't hate it, but well, it makes me laugh anyway. And welcome everyone. Hope you're laughing too. Thanks for coming back to Awesome Truth. We are here today talking about something a little different, Walt. A little off the beaten path. A documentary for sure, but not one on the WWE network. Not one that came out in theaters or got a streaming release. It's a YouTube documentary. It's, I don't want to say cobbled together, but it was certainly fan made. It was, and it's a recap of Adam Page and Kenny Omega. It's a recap of really the AEW, the first couple years of AEW. It's called The Good, the Bad, and the Elite. And Walt, you brought this to our attention. I'd love to hear a little bit about where you found this and sort of what inspired you to bring it to the table as a possible Awesome Truth covered event.
Yes. So every year, I listen to Post Wrestling just because it's free, and they recap all the stuff I want to hear about anyway. It's John Pollock's wrestling group, or I guess what's a troupe, I guess.
Sure.
It would be a good way to put
a traveling band of minstrels.
it. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's a bunch of different characters, but they do a recap of the year, and they talk about like the best documentary series or special. And one of the people on the show brought up this, The Good, the Bad, the Elite. And I'm like, well, if it was considered good, like top of the year, like I'd never heard of it. It was prefaced, it was a YouTube series. And right now my YouTube algorithm, I'm on YouTube because I was rewatching it before this record. It's like, there's like 10 AEW fan made recaps. So it's not like, oh, it's a recap on YouTube, so clearly this must be good. It's like, well, the fact that it was called out on this Post Wrestling special, I'm like, okay, well, I'll check it out. It's either that or Ruthless Aggression Season 2, recapping bullshit from the early 2000s again. But this guy I did a little digging because I'm like, who is this person? Why did they make this?
Yeah, because it's under the banner of outside interference, but obviously it was a real person. I believe his name is Brian. Is that right?
Brian Maxwell Mann. He's like a TV producer, but he also was like a former WWE writing assistant. And he just, outside interference is his YouTube page, but there's 5 videos, and it was started 2 months ago, and this is it. And I don't know if he's doing anything.
At first I was like, oh, this guy must do this all. Him been doing this for years. And I was like, oh, this is all he's ever done. Just
right.
One 5-part series.
Yeah. And so I checked it out. I'm like, I sent it to you. This could be pretty fun. It's newer stuff. We'll talk about why I use the term documentary in quotes, but it's a series. It allows us to talk about AEW, allows us to talk about Hangman Page, Adam Page, and yeah, that's kind of how. Then it was a text message later.
Yep.
To you.
And I like that too because I watch AEW a little bit. I'd say I watch once a month. I actually just went to a live show in DC, which was very, very fun. I know you've been to a live show before. I think you watch of a somewhat similar consistency, and I keep up with it, but I don't. I'm certainly not an every week kind of guy. I think it's by far the superior product at this point, but I just don't make a habit of watching every Wednesday or every Friday, certainly. So something like this I really enjoyed because it's not, when I hear YouTube video, YouTube series, YouTube documentary, I assume it's some schlub giving his or her opinion about some pop culture bullshit that I care about, but I do not want to hear what you think. I don't want to hear your voice. Who are you? Why do you matter? What's so great about this is it recaps a promotion I really like but don't follow in super great detail, and it doesn't have any sort of analysis or anything. Like, it's just the things that happen. Like, it's just clips from Being the Elite, clips from Dynamite, clips from Rampage, clips from, pay-per-views, and that's it. And it condenses the story into a very enjoyable format. And it grabs, I was going to say, like, the choice parts, but I'd say it goes pretty in detail. It seems like they grab almost everything of consequence, be it high consequence or entertaining or just sort of moving the plot along. It seems like it does such a good job of condensing this pretty long, years long story into a very fun and engaging narrative.
I thought a lot about this because the reason I use the term quote unquote documentary, you can't see the air quotes, so I have to say quote unquote, is because it's not really, it's a documentary in the truest sense, where it's like the moving pictures of recapping a series of events.
Yeah.
Like there's no talking heads
with an objective like sort of bent, like there's no the only subjectivity is what he chose to show and what he chose to not show. Which
doesn't seem very subjective in a sense that he showed everything that that was relevant to this storyline, this arc, this character arc of Adam Page. But I think, like, again, there's no talking heads. We don't have Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole telling us why this is relevant from a fan perspective. Like, no one was there to tell us this. All it was just kind of lifts with like artful editing and a pretty cool intro graphic package, and like just literally wall-to-wall clips in chronological order that led to this. But I kind of like that more because if you think about it, in a wrestling story told on like TV and I guess in AEW's case, Being the Elite is also very important viewing, which we'll get to. But like, if everything is done well enough, you should be able to just string together these clips in a way where I don't need anyone to narrate this or tell me how to get from A to B. The events should just string along organically and you get the story. I mean, that's how wrestling in a perfect way should work, right?
Yes, it really is. Like, and that's I'm sure they left something out. Like, obviously, I don't watch every show. I'm sure there are weeks where Hangman did something tangentially related, but not really, and they just, well, we're not showing this. So I'm not going to act like they covered every detail and didn't hid the warts or anything like that. But in watching this, and then I was also couldn't help but think about, WWE's famous hype packages, 5 minutes at a pay-per-view, right, which condenses a month into 300 seconds, and are renowned for the last 2 decades in just being amazingly well done, getting you so excited, like being, especially with the rise of YouTube, like watching them over and over, like they're the best. Like they make everything look good. But the downside of watching every week of WWE programming is that there's so much shit they didn't purposely put in there because it's 300 seconds. Like, they just plow through the fun parts and leave out the bad parts, and that's fine. That's sort of how wrestling works too. For realistically, for fans, if you can't, you're almost certainly going to get a couple bad weeks, and you get a couple good ones, and you forget the ones that were kind of crappy, and you focus on the ones you really enjoyed, and half the year you get a solid bit of wrestling. But what is so good about this is, again, not comprehensive entirely, but they show such good A to B to C to D storytelling that, like you said, is just so impossible to do from a WWE perspective, especially drawn out this long and ultimately going where it needs to go. Like, it's just so refreshing to watch this, and whether they planned it all in advance or whether they found their way, at various times throughout the process, like, it's just so good. Like, it went almost exactly the way it had to go. It ended where it needed to be, and in chronicling it all, you can just see how clear and smart and good so many of their choices were that got them where they needed to be.
Well, So it is strung together really well. And, in AEW's case, unlike WWE, in AEW's case, there's multiple layers to their storytelling because, I don't think WWE's ever referenced anything that ever happened on, like, The Bump or .com or YouTube.
Maybe Talking Smack is the only thing I'd give a little bit of credit to, but even that was sparing.
Yeah, R.I.P. But or is it maybe not? I don't even know. But you know, in AEW, they put a big emphasis on the stories they tell on being the elite and on YouTube and you know, like you said, we watch most weeks, half the time, some of the time, Dynamite. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't sit there being the elite every week. Like I just, there's only so much time in the week.
I've never seen
But
Being the Elite before ever. This is the first time I've ever engaged with it.
well, apparently we missed a lot of storytelling
And
and
it looks
character
fun
development.
too. I was like, this is all pretty good. Like I figured
Yeah,
I would like it, but I was amazed at how much I laughed and how much they moved the stories along on this weird, elite centric YouTube show.
yeah. I mean, like that's what like kind of frustrates me, but also the enjoyment of this, where it's like, wow, they did a lot of great work to kind of lead to this point, and a lot of which that I didn't even know existed. But unfortunately, like because I didn't know existed, like Adam Page has been champion for a couple months now, like since November.
hmm
I've already like this is too late for me to get this information that led to this big ride. Like I like to think AEW does a good job to like you know weave into a Dynamite or a Rampage what's happening on Being the Elite and kind of reinforce it but like they really don't because there's a lot of small moments that happen there that like you just never know about unless you watch it. And so it was great to see it all in one giant timeline strung together. But like at the same time, I'm just like, damn, I missed a lot of stuff that was kind of relevant to arguably the most important storyline ever.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it was interesting because it didn't make me want to start watching Being the Elite necessarily. Like, I don't think I'm gonna hop
Same.
in right
Yeah.
now and consume. I don't know if you are, but I don't think
No.
that's yeah. It's but so maybe this is the way to consume it. Like if something happens of consequence on there, certainly if it's tied to, like you said, the biggest story of the last couple of years, maybe we'll see it someday on a compilation video like this. Like it just feels like very good use of a lot of their fringier guys, like especially Dark Order. Like I already really enjoyed the whole Dark Order Hangman story from what I saw on Dynamite, what I read about, the clips I've seen, just because I liked the way they obviously pivoted after Brody died and became a little sillier. And I think we're already becoming a little sillier when Brody was alive anyway, but certainly now without a leader, like they with a bunch of basically jobbers, they sort of had to find a new niche, and I think they found it really well. But I was just impressed at how funny they were. Like I was like, these guys are so good at comedy. Like Hangman's pretty funny. Like Hangman has pretty good
Yeah.
comedic timing. I think he's way funnier than the Bucks and Kenny. But the Dark Order, I was like, shit, these guys like I did sort of to your point. I lamented a little bit because I was like, man, they're doing like really good comedy work that probably wouldn't work anywhere else in wrestling. Like, I don't think it would work on Dynamite. Certainly wouldn't
Yeah.
work in WWE. So I'm glad they have this outlet. But I was also like, shit. Like I wish the Dark Order could somehow turn this into even more. Because like they're very good. They're picture perfect at what they're doing right now, which they seem to have fallen into by happenstance and circumstance.
Yeah. God, and just going down all these like backstage being the elite like in Dark Order moments too. Like you forget all the stuff that has happened with particularly with that group. Like they went through a tremendous arc. Hangman, like just seeing them interact, like it's hard to tell how or why that even was a storyline, but then they just kept going back to it and it kept developing more. And over time, you just see like this kind of amazing story kind of just unfold with all them. Also, too, like you kind of see Hangman develop the entire time, like throughout this, like these being the elite segments with the Dynamite segments, and you see him grow too. And it's kind of like funny to see where we started, where it's like the Dark Order's big storyline at one point was like we're gonna get Colt Cabana to join, and now it's like God, he looked like such a loser in the background because now it's like now I see where they are now. Like they're such big parts of the show and like bigger names now than they were when they first started.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give them too much credit, because it does seem like again, like they fell into some stuff, and falling into like they're with Brody Lee dying, like that really must have forced a big change because he was not only the main event talent of the group, he was the muscle of the group. He seemed like he was primed for just true superstardom in AEW. But
Yeah.
I think this is why AEW is not more successful yet, obviously in terms of financial, but creatively, I think there's really no comparison. It's because I think they just give people room to breathe, you know? Like, I think they find room and space and time for, like, Silver and Reynolds, who are, like, super jobbery tag team. Like, Silver's, like, like a very small man. Like, they're just, the whole team of the Dark Order is pretty nondescript looking in terms of size and stature. But they all just, like, there is space. We talked about this with Leroy when he came on last episode. Like, there is space in that company for people who are weird, people who are eclectic, people who are funny, people who they find what you're good at and they sort of let you run with it, you know? And they don't apologize for someone being too small or someone being silly or a gimmick being dumb. Like, they make it work. And, like, the best example of that is Hangman. Hangman didn't become the leader of the Dark Order. He's just their friend. Like, they're just pals. It's so much better than Hangman joining the cult that needs a new boss and becoming trying to, like, it's just so much better if they're just a group of friends who interact on TV, you know, every now and then when they need to. Like, that's something I think wrestling fans have been, you know, talking about for so long. Like, don't break up the New Day. Just let them be pals who just don't see each other that much, you know? Like, and they've fortunately done that to their credit on WWE, but it's just like the things that AEW allows to happen just feel like a byproduct of, okay, what do we got here, and what can we make them into that makes them a functioning part of the show? They don't need to be the biggest draw. They exist in the ecosystem, and they have value, and we will just tap it whenever we need to.
I mean, they implement what I have to call nuance.
Yes. Which in wrestling is just the most insane shit ever to deploy at all. Sure,
right. Yeah, God forbid we don't just hit you over the head with an idea or a character or motivation. But you do see when they're building the Dark Order and Adam Page, like, through this compilation of clips and quote unquote documentary, like, you see, like, yeah, it's like funny skits of them trying to have him join, and, like, sometimes it's always like a big, like, bit, like, where it's like, oh shucks, we got away and we didn't get his membership again. But then it just allows you to, like, oh, like, now on Dynamite these guys are all together and it's not weird and it makes sense. And, like, you know, it's hard to predict how people were going to feel about all of these characters and all of these dynamics and the where this all went. But, like, you know, that was a pretty big moment that when the Dark Order came out with Hangman and that huge 10-man with all these stipulations and stakes attached to it. And they had that huge display of all of the Dark Order coming out with Page, like, one by one in this big, like,
it's like a chills-inducing moment. Like, it really is incredible.
Right, and you don't get that.
It's just Hangman and his dumb friends. Like,
yeah.
It's not...
But, like, even as a casual viewer of all of this, I'm like, all right, I get it. Like, I get it. I watch here and there. I understand that they're trying to build something off screen, on screen, but, like, it didn't take much for me to, like, be like, wow, that was really cool, and it's not ridiculous that they're all, like, teaming up.
Yep. It's great. And like we said, the way that this documentary series puts it all together is it just goes bit by bit, you know? It shows all the players in this too. You know, we talked about Dark Order a lot, but FTR was involved for a while. You know, Brody was obviously there when he was alive. The Bucks are intimately involved. Like, everyone there's so many people on the fringes of, you know, the Elite story. Adam Cole gets involved at the end a little bit. Like, right. there's just AEW just weaves people in and out as need be, you know, like and I think that enables this story to keep it going for so long. And because it's not just Kenny and Paige and the Bucks just doing shit every week. Like, there's other people, they win the tag belts and they go off and do their own thing for 6 months, which is super intimately involved to where it ends up, but gives them a whole thing to do and be like, rather than do the classic trope of, you know, will they coexist? It's like, no, they'll very much coexist for 6 months. They'll lose to a very good team and they'll sort of just, like, peter out there. Like, it's just the way that they put this together. It's just so nice to see the storytelling that it just allows other things to come with it. You know, allows it to pick up steam when it needs to, allows other characters to float in and out as need be. Like it's just it's not even that complicated. Like it's another wrestling lament about WWE is just remember your characters' backstories. And your current day stories will be so much better. Or just acknowledge that these two people have interacted 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, and we'll salivate like fucking dogs. You know, we just want you to throw us a bone and make it and tell us a slightly complex story involving characters who seem to have met before in the past.
Yeah, like remember your own goddamn history.
Yeah.
Like I did.
It's rich.
And I don't even watch Raw anymore. Like. Please, you guys this is your jobs to create the history and the action of your entertainment brand. Like, please fucking remember what happened last week. Thank you. Also, too, like the through line of all this is like the story of Adam Page from 3 years ago till now is kind of the story of AEW in many ways. And like, you know, because this first chance at getting the title was against Chris Jericho on like one of their first events and to determine who was going to be the first ever champion. So his lineage really starts way back when with him involved and like just makes this and through his high profile matches that tell this particular arc. I mean, we left out like his match against Big Money Matt and his match with like Brian Cage, and that's totally fine. We kind of gloss over his feud with not Neville, Hawk. Thank you. But they're not relevant. And what is relevant is actually like some of like the biggest matches in AEW history. So it's like you kind of get this. You take this journey of like where do we start and where are we now? Both for Adam Page and AEW, and a lot of their biggest like characters.
Yep, and you see that when AEW got going, you know, I said Hangman was in the first title match. I remember myself feeling this way. I think you and I have seen Hangman before. I think we saw him on ROH show in Philly at one point, like way back.
I don't know.
I think he was there. I've seen him.
Was.
I've seen him when I lived in LA. I've seen him definitely have a couple matches when New Japan came to Long Beach. So I've seen Hangman wrestle before, and I was never particularly over the moon for him. I was like, what's this guy? He's a cowboy? Like, there's really nothing here. Like, he's just a guy. Like, he's fine. I don't hate him, but I don't love him. And when AEW started, you know, I remember him getting that first title match, and it was like clear as day that Jericho's going to win. Like, of course he's going to be their first champion. They're not going to put Hangman Page in the record books as champion number one. Right. And, you know, to go along with that, when Kenny first came in, and the Bucks too, they were just very boring white meat baby faces, you know? Like, just smiling, having solid matches, not really going anywhere. Like, AEW was clearly trying to find its footing. And, like, in retrospect, maybe they were just like, look, we are, you know, most people watching us on TNT will be aware of these guys, but a lot of people will not really know their backstories. Like, we kind of just got to let them flesh out a little bit first, you know? Like, whether they were just playing it safe or whether they were thinking, well, we can get to the good stuff in a year or two. Like, it seems like they just allowed these guys to be sort of boring, sort of milquetoast, like, sort of whatever. But then you see things start to change. You see them find the Hangman character, which weirdly is that he's a drunk, but a pleasant drunk. You see Kenny and the Bucks turn heel, where they are just like 800 times cooler as heels. Like, it's night and day. And you just see these stories go over time, and it just makes me really happy that they give them this time to grow, and it makes me retroactively not that I was ever mad at them, but it makes me retroactively go, first couple 6 months, like maybe they just wanted to have wrestling match, you know, like they weren't thinking story, they were thinking let's have these guys go out there and do 15 minutes of good stuff, and as we build a show and a foundation and infrastructure, characters over time, we'll get to the good stuff later on. And a lot of times it's dangerous to trust a wrestling company to do that because we've been burned so many times before. Yes. But this is this documentary is culmination of when you do trust them and when they do pay it off.
Right. I mean, if this guy won the title on the first night, that would have been a disservice to him as much as anyone else, as much as AEW itself. Because I mean, like, I know it's cliche to say the chase is, there's more money in the chase. or whatever
Yeah.
wrestling promoters would say for years now. But like in his case, like he needed that time and he needed that story because like you just said, like, oh yeah, we saw him in like in Philadelphia. Like, no, I did wait, I don't remember. Like I only remember, granted, I only remember a handful of people on that card, but like that's besides the point.
I think he was just the guy you're like, oh, he's in the Bullet Club, but he's just like, I
Right.
think he's there for seasoning. Like, I don't think he's
Right.
there because he has a lot right now.
Back when the Bullet Club had as many members as like the
Yes.
NWO at the height of its popularity.
Yeah, that's right.
So he was like the Stevie Ray or the Scott Norton of the Bullet Club. It is interesting to see that, he was the Adam Page like flirting with leaving the Elite, then turning into a full-on drunk, like was kind of their first big story too, because it involved the Elite, and that got over pretty well for a while there. The Adam Page like hold my beer
Hmm.
ripple of his character, which has kind of mostly gone away, but was a pretty fun moment, a pretty fun time. And also too, just like the strife of the Elite, like was really their first story because like most people didn't necessarily know who Adam Page was, but just being associated with them and giving them, because to your point, like Kenny and the Bucks were just doing matches. They were just good guys.
Hmm.
And Page is the one where it's like, what's this guy's deal? Like, is he part of the team? Is he not? And, obviously that's been taken, it's come a long way, but it's just like, yeah, when this company's trying to find their footing, Adam Page is like one of the first people they really relied on to like introduce people to AEW storytelling, which is important.
And I think it ties into what makes AEW special as well. Talking about being the Elite, talking about, Kenny and the Bucks sort of being boring baby faces, and then eventually becoming power hungry guys. The whole thing going on with Cody right now, where he's basically constantly being smarky and talking about how he's in charge and talking about his contract situation and all that kind of stuff. Like they seem to be doing a pretty good job of incorporating those behind the scene elements. Like obviously you watch Being the Elite, it's super smarky and they're all, and I would say a little too much, I would imagine, but at the same time, like if you like the company, like even if you don't know that the Bucks and Kenny and Cody have business power, they are the big names of the company. And I think they're settling into a good spot where those guys don't have to necessarily be heels, but they should be flaunting their prominence in this company, their abilities, their resumes, and maybe obviously hinting or outright talking about how they have power beyond that. I just think it's a very logical way to go. Like it's interesting stuff, and I think they're doing it in a way where it is not entirely inside baseball. Like I think you don't need to know that Kenny Omega is an EVP of the company to appreciate his heel turn for just being a piece of shit with a weird beard and Triple H facial hair and and just everything about him that made him so good at that kind of job. Like I think they're leaning into those parts of their roles, which I think which is so important for them. Like because the best way to build a star is to do a Hangman thing and give a babyface something great to do, someone to push back on, someone to rebel against. And I think that's what they did with Hangman, and it was so smart. And kudos to the Bucks and Kenny for realizing that like they are better served, and maybe they want to do this all along because it does seem like a lot more fun. But just to know that like okay, like our best job here is to make this guy the next big guy. And what this documentary, why we liked it so much, is they executed it in a way that it's not perfect, but it just is just so planned and so refreshingly competent. Like it just that we've said before, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just fucking tell a story from A to the end, from A to Z, and just keep us entertained and enjoyed along the way, and we'll regard it as magic. And if it is truly magic, it'll be transcendent. But if you just follow the path that is laid out in front of you, we're almost certainly going to like it when it gets there.
Right. I mean, and look at what Page has done as champion since. It's like, if you had a CM Punk and Daniel Bryanson or Bryan Danielson come in, and now Kenny has to do double duty, and like he has to be like, you know what I mean? Like, who's gonna have the big match with him? And now it's like, oh well, let's put him with Page. Like this guy is now one of our biggest stars, and now like we have a program with our biggest free agent, and it'll mean something, and he can wrestle him for 60 minutes and he can cut fire promos and go toe to toe with him. And we don't feel like, oh boy, we made him, or like we don't have the firepower to match a Bryan Danielson. Like, I mean, I think they've done a great job setting this character up and this wrestler up where he can go toe to toe and he can be in the ring with him, and it's not like a step down. I mean, gun to my head, Kenny or Adam Page versus Danielson. I'll probably pick Kenny just for historical reasons, but like what we got the last few months was like really damn good, and you don't get that unless you lay the groundwork with creating a star the way they did. So yep. I think you're right.
Absolutely. And just think about, when WWE did fall through on one of their rare, take the path that's very obvious, and Daniel Bryan wins at WrestleMania 30, what did Daniel Bryan do next, Walt? Who was his next feud against?
You know who it is.
I want to hear you say it.
It's got to be Kane, of course. It's got to be Kane.
They ran a Kane feud back. Like, they didn't let him go a half hour with CM Punk. They didn't let him do like anything of note, of consequence. They followed the same boring ass blueprint they always do. And yeah. I hate to keep comparing the two, but it's hard not to when one company seems to understand how to do this so much better. Like, again, doesn't mean they're going to be more successful. Like, I think being big and cartoony and having that track record WWE's going to be just fine. But if you're talking about storytelling and you watch this little documentary here, I don't see how you can say this is anything but excellent. Like, it's just the way it's supposed to be. Like, it's simple and smart in all the right ways.
To be fair, Kane is the perfect wrestler to program in the Backlash dead zone.
But like you said, it kills a run. Like, all of a sudden you start wondering where the momentum goes. Like you said, the chase is better. Like, the chase is the stories we
Always.
Remember. But then what happens after the chase is it's never going to be as good. But you can at least going off the path at that point it seems like a much more fun route than just running it back with like, oh, what monster are we going to feed our little guy champion? Like, it just doesn't make any sense at that point.
Oh man, and just like Daniel Bryan's initial title run, Kane also kills any momentum I have for talking about wrestling. No, but to kind of put a bow on this, do you think, in your opinion, do you think Adam Page is a star now?
Yes, I do think so. I mean, I think, like you said, I think you summed it up really well. Like, they brought in I don't want to say the biggest names, two of the biggest names in the last decade of wrestling, and Adam Cole, who is a beloved wrestler who's on a scale down from CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, but certainly pulls the weight and is already doing great work in AEW. And I don't think those signings, those acquisitions have hurt Adam Page in the least. Like, I don't think he's fallen down the pecking order. I think he looks very much at home with those guys every time I see, a match involving him. Like, I'm a little disheartened. It's press time as we're recording this. He's about to go into a Lance Archer feud. Don't really love that, but it does feel a little like, I like Lance Archer. He feels a little caney. Yeah. But
I was going to say, is Lance Archer the Kane of AEW?
He might be. But at the same time, like, I think he has proven himself through this, and I think AEW knows really well. They seem like they don't, rely on the belt. The belt's important, but they seem to be okay. Like, you can make a marquee match of just guy versus guy, and the belt doesn't have to be involved. But we'll still give the belt the weight it deserves, and hopefully that'll always be, if not the main event, then a very, very important match of purpose. But they seem like Punk and MJF are having a big feud right now, and I don't feel like that is impeding on Page at all. I feel like they're just two parallel things that are occurring at the same time, and that gives me hope for him that he won't hold this forever, and maybe it'll never be as good as it was, in the last year and a half of watching all these great clips, but that there will still be I think he's earned a spot at the top of that pecking order for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way to put it. It's just like, things can run parallel. It doesn't have to be a hierarchy necessarily, but I do think that that Adam Page, based on everything we just watched, he's at the top of the hierarchy, if only slightly, because of all the work that was put into putting him there and putting him over with all these other WWE made or other or international stars. So
yeah, he's their, like you said, he's their homegrown success story for sure. Like, he came in pretty mid tier and now has emerged as a top 5 guy, and that's impressive work. Like, no matter how you slice it, that's something worth tipping your cap to.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it was just this documentary was just a nice revisiting of all of this.
I will say, though, are you enthused about other YouTube documentaries now? Or are you going to wait till they get recommended by someone of stature?
Yeah, just like WWE Network, I'm going to wait on those.
Well, I will say to Brian and Outside Interference, like, maybe there's none other story worthy of this at this time, but I like the format. I think we both enjoyed it. I think like we said, AEW is the perfect company to do one of these on because of the way they tell their stories through so many parallel means. So if we see something, if I subscribe to Outside Interference Wallet and I see them put out some new content, I'm probably gonna give that a shot at least.
Yeah, and Brian, we're gonna at you for this one. All right, so we better get a.
Oh my God! Well, breaking news right now. Go to the Outside Interference page on YouTube. There's a trailer for a new series called Common Man about Cody Rhodes.
Oh, yay. Wow.
So we may actually be back in the not too distant future talking about a new Cody Rhodes series. That's unbelievable. I can't believe I just thought. Literally 30 minutes ago he posted it.
Well, hey, remember when Cody was in the Elite?
Well, maybe we're going to learn more about all that if we watch Common Man, so...
Looking forward to it. We'll review that too. Yeah. We'll still at you.
But like we said, on YouTube, The Good, the Bad, and the Elite, the creator of the channel is Outside Interference, and it was a great watch. So thank you, Walters. That was a great choice.
Thank you, Post Wrestling.
Thanks, Post Wrestling. We appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. Yeah, if you want more of our great work, you can find our archives at awesometruth.libsyn.com. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Wherever podcasts are delivered, we are there. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at awesometruthpod. Thank you all so much for listening. And remember, the truth will set you free.